Okay, welcome to Paxate Academy and Inception Marketing's webinar for this month, The Power of Positioning. I'm Maria Armstrong from Paxate Academy in Asia Pacific, and we're joined by Kayla Elise, who from Inception Marketing, who's going to be delivering a very exciting webinar this month. The Power of Positioning. I'm really excited about this one. I was telling somebody this morning how excited I am about this. I think this is a topic that a number of our partners have been finding just difficult. You know, we work with MSPs. MSPs are all MSPs equal? Are all MSPs telling the same story? How do we tell our story? Where do we sit? How do we position ourselves? So these are all things that people struggle with and they don't quite know the answer to. So that's why Kayla's here today, to help us with all of these answers. So a little bit of housekeeping to get started. You haven't got microphones and cameras just yet. Just to help from a distraction perspective for Kayla. But what I'm going to do is you have got chat, so please ask any questions in the chat at any time. Chuck in the questions. I will be monitoring the chat, and every now and again I will jump in and ask questions on your behalf. So we'll hit pause every now and again, and Kayla will answer some questions as needed. And then at the end, if we've got a bit of time, we'll open up microphones, we'll open up cameras. We can have a bit of a chat about the topics and the conversation if anyone's got any questions. So feel free to ask questions at any time throughout the webinar. I'm just going to make sure that we are recording, which we are. And Kayla, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody? And
thanks, Maria. Hi, everybody. My name's Kayla. I'm the Managing Director over at Inception Marketing. A little bit about Inception, shameless plug. So we are a outsourced marketing management, or CMO as a service business, specifically designed for businesses in the IT services industry. So MSPs, SIs, technology consultants are all our main target market, and that's really all we do. So we understand the nuances. Our team have a really experienced career in channel. So we've got experience. Obviously, I used to work for a large sort of SI MSP business. And we've got experiences, with distributors and things like that. So our team is really knowledgeable in this space. So that's why we do what we do. Why I started the business, I just knew that there were a lot of MSPs, SIs, technology consultants, everything you can sort of name in this space that needed marketing support. Didn't know how to position themselves, didn't know how to get their branding right, but weren't probably at the stage of growth where they needed a full-time marketing resource, or potentially couldn't afford one. Marketing resources are not cheap. So I started the business to be able to give everyone access to a senior marketing resource. So that's why Inception was born. And we're now sort of a team of 5. So we're slowly growing. We've been around for about 2 years nearly. So it's, that's really sort of where we're at in the journey. I've sort of already covered this, but just a bit of a background on me. I used to work for a large ASX listed SI with an MSP capability. So I used to head the marketing team up there. So took the business through multiple acquisitions until it was acquired itself. So it was, which sort of led me to the point of starting the business. So I've worked for a number of tech consultants. I've worked with a number of different partners before. So I really understand this channel, and I really sort of wanted to help as many MSPs and smaller SIs as I could to get their message out there. So what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about brand positioning today. So what is it? Why do you need to consider it for your business? We get a lot of questions around brand positioning, which is why when Maria and I had our initial discussion around, what webinar did I want to do? I thought this was a really good starting point for us. We're going to look into the core elements of the positioning strategy. So what different strategies there are and what you need to consider when you're sort of, putting together a positioning strategy and sort of the key components, right? We're going to look at the different positioning strategies, and then we're going to talk about sort of how do you go about actually positioning your business. And I'm going to sort of talk about I'm going to give you an example and talk through an example, not an IT example, because we sort of, want to give you a bit of a retrospective example or a bit of a, outside looking in example, as opposed to something that's a bit too close to the home. And then I'm going to finish with a bit of an offer for the people on this webinar that we might be able to help you with. So I hope that sounds good. All right. So what is brand positioning? So you can see I've got the definition there on a screen. So it is really about positioning your brand in the mind of your customers and creating that uniqueness around yourself and what differentiates you from your competitors. So we get a lot of comments, a lot of sort of questions about, well, why would you, how am I different to, like you said at the beginning, Maria, like how are you different to, another MSP? Like what makes me different? And we get a lot of people telling us that they don't think that they're different and they don't, how to differentiate themselves is a really sort of key question on their minds because the process of sort of, I guess, positioning yourself differently creates that uniqueness, which in turn attracts different customers and new customers to your business. So if you can sort of wedge yourself out and get that value wedge, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that saying before, but creating sort of a value wedge for your customers and how you service them differently to your competitors is really sort of the key here. And this is a key piece of strategic work that we offer in all of our marketing strategies. So we definitely are skilled in that. I'm going to give you a bit of a taster of that a little bit later on. So what does a good brand positioning statement look like? Essentially what you want to end up with at the end of it of this process is a bit of a statement about what makes you different. Now, I'm going to stray away today from the traditional examples. I feel like they've been done to death. So things like Apple, things like Disney, things like Tesla. I have to say I have mentioned a couple of them in like later examples, but the main one that I want to focus on today is I've chosen Harley Davidson. So we all know who they are. They're a motorcycle brand. That is their positioning statement on the screen. So for individuals who want to experience the freedom and adventure on the road, Harley Davidson is the leading motorcycle brand with a rich heritage and image of rebellion and individualism. So just keep that one in mind. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the key elements of a brand position. So when you're looking at a brand position, these are the key elements that you want to actually consider. So, and we'll go into these a little bit more depth later, but the first one is the customer. So understanding who your target audience is and the foundation is really the foundation here. So who are you going after? What's your offer? So what are your services that you provide to the customer? So identify the customer's needs, identify their pain points, and how does your solution help them solve it? And then the last one is your competition. So, what are your competitors doing? So where do you sit in amongst your competitors? So having that analysis of the competitive landscape is really important about where you sit. So where you and there's different levers you can pull to sort of understand this. So your revenue could be higher. You could have a different offering. You could be really niche. And we'll go through one in particular how we like to measure it later on, but it's just important to understand this and have a sense of it and identify the gaps in the market that could potentially be there that your competitors are not filling. So if we go back to the Harley Davidson one, you can see here, I've identified the sort of the key, I've sort of matched the key core elements of a brand positioning, the core elements of the brand positioning strategy to this statement, right? So you can see, you know, who is it for? It's really for individuals. You can't, well, you can ride a motorcycle with two people, but it's not the same experience as a car, right? A Harley Davidson is really sort of built for one person. So it is really for individuals. The offer, you can see there's sort of, they've included that offer in two places in their positioning statement. So the experience and freedom, that's what they're offering their customers. And I just want to note here that it's a feeling, like this is a feeling that they're giving to their customer, right? It's not a product. They don't mention like the engine or the tires or anything like that. They mention the feeling. And then they've obviously got rebellion and individualism as well. Again, it's a feeling statement. So what are the emotions that you're trying to provoke? And then the competition is obviously the leading motorcycle brand. So we know there's a lot of motorcycle brands out there. That's really them stating that. I'm going to pause there. Is there any questions so far, Marie?
No questions so far, but that's the first time I've seen it broken down like that. And I loved seeing that, the way you highlighted with the different colours, the customer, the offer and the competition. I thought that was, Wayne's just said in the chat, you've already got him thinking. I'm just like, oh, I'm going to look at all these other brand statements out there going, oh.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think the other thing that really I liked about that particular one is the emotiveness of it. And that is about the, this is really about the, this is the feelings that we want to provoke. And this is what we try and extract from you through a value proposition workshop or something like that when we're working with customers to try and really understand, like, what is it that you want your customer to feel? And I'd encourage you to think about that as we're going through the sort of the back end of this presentation is really the steps that we tend to take and that I would encourage you to take. But I'd also be thinking top of mind, what is it that you want your customers to feel when they interact with that brand? So why should you care about this? Because, like, you know, rightly so, it's sort of one of those things that you think, oh, you know, this is a little bit too hard, or, you know, I'm just another MSP, so why should I care about this? Well, here's why you should, right? So this is really about how you wedge out and create that value wedge for your business. What is that going to do for you? That's going to improve your client acquisition. If you are constantly top of mind and you're constantly carving things out in your customer's mind, making them think differently, making them feel differently when they interact with your brand or see something from your brand, that's going to improve your client acquisition. Number one, you're going to have stronger relationships and retention with your current customers as well. If you're constantly delivering them value, anyone who's interacted with me knows I constantly bang on about value. Like, how are we giving value? How are we giving people a taste of value? How are we giving people a teaser of the value that you could potentially provide? You know, when marketing, we talk about giving things away for free. So we talk about, like, you know, ebooks and guides and blogs that have deep-seated value in them, and people, the idea of that is to try and get people to think, wow, if they're giving this away for free, then what are they going to give me if I pay for it? So the more value that you're giving to those current clients, the stronger the retention is going to be and the stickier you are in their business. Marketing leadership and differentiation from your competitors. So we're going to go into this a little bit more with the competitor slide, but this is about how do you make yourself a market leader? So my previous boss, he's one of his favorite things to say is that, you know, what do you want to be famous for? It's constantly the question, right? So getting this UVP or this positioning statement right starts to create that, what do you want to be famous for? It starts to get those key messages and themes translating through to that. And then you're able to sort of wedge yourself out as a market leader. Another thing is justification for your pricing. So if you're constantly top of mind for your customers and you're constantly bringing that uniqueness and you're constantly bringing that value, it does allow you to, justify sort of a higher pricing. So, or even just a value pricing or a moderate pricing. So, we definitely, we'll go into different sort of strategies in a minute, and pricing is one of those strategies. But how do you sort of justify the value? You're having that sort of constant value and that almost proudness of your customers working with you by creating that value lets you justify that pricing. I hope that makes sense. And it helps you maintain consistency as well. So, how are you constantly, when you're constantly thinking about getting out content, how do you sort of make sure that that content is the right themes? How do you make sure that it is the, how do you make sure that it's constantly coming back to that point of difference and that UVP? So it allows your theming and your messaging to be consistent as well. All right, so we're going to go into the different types of positioning strategies. So there's a couple of different types, 4 to be exact. So the first one is your product strategy. So I should preface this before I jump into them and basically say that these are different tactics that you can take to position yourself differently. So, like I said, there's 4 different styles that you can take to position yourself differently, and I've got examples of each of them. So the first one is your product strategy. So this focuses on your product. It makes the product the hero of your business. So is my product, my product is the center of my business, and that is where I provide my value or my point of difference. So a good example is Tesla or Apple, right? So Tesla, obviously, really unique electric cars, fully electric. I think, one of the first ones to sort of make a mass market of it. That's their point of difference. Their product is their point of difference. When you move into your second strategy, so your customer strategy, this makes your customers experience the hero of your business. So a good example is your fine dining restaurant or something like that. You don't necessarily go there because you're going to get the best steak, but you go there because, you're going to get exceptional customer service. You're going to know that your wine is paired correctly with your steak, etc. It makes that, you go there purely for the experience. So another example could be like a spa or something like that. So you go there purely for the experience and the dressing gowns and the fluffy robes and the fluffy slippers and things like that. That's what you go there for, not necessarily because it's going to give you the best massage in town. The third is a pricing strategy. So we don't tend to see this much in the B2B sales space. We usually see it more in the B2C, this highly volatile, highly competitive market. Not to say that B2B isn't, but we generally see this strategy used a lot more in that B2C market. So this usually focuses on a cheap price model. So, good example is sort of your Costco or your Reject Shop, their models and their marketing and their UVP is really around, we're going to give you the best sort of, value for money. Or, you're going to get something at a cheaper rate that you might not see, somewhere else. And then your final one is a competitive strategy. So good example of this one is like your insurance companies or your energy retailers. I was going to put Woolworths and Coles in here, but I think they're actually more in that pricing strategy model. Competitive strategies are really around they're going to undercut each other. They're going to say that their product is better. That is the key sort of, the value wedge for them. It's actually a sign of a sort of immature business from a marketing sense. So they're generally focusing on what other people are doing as opposed to what they're doing really well. And they don't these are for markets that are really sort of everything is the same. And, I've had people sort of say to me that, oh, well, isn't an MSP the same as, you know, an energy retailer or, you know, from a marketing sense where everything's the same. And I strongly argue that that is not the case. Everyone has got a point of difference in this market. And we're pulling that out with our customers every single day. So I've got, you know, proof points for that. But this strategy is really, it's really about like ripping people down. It's about, you know, saying when compared to X, when you know that that's, you know, Woolies or Coles. That's sort of what got me thinking about Woolies and Coles being in this strategy as well, but they're not actually, they're actually in the pricing strategy. That's really what this strategy is about. So is there any questions so far? Because I'm sort of at this example point now, so I wanted to sort of check in.
There's no questions in the chat. I haven't seen, I don't know if you've seen this, I haven't seen any MSPs successfully use the competitive strategy.
Yeah, that's it.
Doesn't work in our industry.
No, and no one wants to be the brand that's pulling another brand down either, right? Like that's just not really a nice thing to do, particularly when we're all jumping on calls like this one together and seeing each other. It's just probably not the strategy that we want to take. Whereas I feel like, you know, in that more volatile sort of B2C marketplace, like an energy retailer or something, they're probably not going to get on a call like this and see each other or, you know, see each other at the next, you know, conference or something like that. So it's probably not to say that there isn't energy retailer conferences. I'm sure that there is, but it's not really a strategy that I ever recommend. And in fact, we actively avoid that type of strategy. But I thought it was worth mentioning because there are people that do it.
So the pricing and the competitive strategy are probably ones to if not actively, will be aware of, but probably avoid in our market, or not actively consider. Look at the other strategies.
Yeah, we generally ask our customers to sort of think about the offerings and the customer experience when we're doing a UVP workshop with them. So we generally ask our customers to try and, like I said before, what emotions are you trying to provoke from customers when they work with you? So, for example, I'm not going to mention the customer's name, but they have a really good synergy between the business owner and the person running the business in one of our customers, and that is actually part of their customer experience, is the synergy and the sort of interaction that the customer gets with the two of them is actually part of their positioning strategy. They make the customer feel like they're part of the banter. So that's something that's really we try and pull that type of stuff out in a workshop.
Like that.
Yeah. All right. So
no questions in the chat.
That's okay. That's okay. I have got my contact details available at the end of this. So if there are any questions, or if I'm getting you thinking and you have any questions later on, then you'll have my details to shoot me a message. All right. So how do you actually go about doing this? Because, you know, I've given you all the strategies. I've given you why you need to consider it. You're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, this is interesting, but how do I actually go about it? So I'm going to give you a simple sort of run by run on how to actually go about doing this. So like I mentioned before, the first step you want to do is identify who your target audience is. So if you don't know who they are, or you're not sure what they look like, just start really simple. Just think of one person, one ideal buyer, and you might already have them as a customer. So one of the things I'm constantly thinking about in my business is, how do I get more of X? So how do I get more Toms? How do I get more Bills? Like, I'm just pulling out names. How do I get more of those customers, and what do they look like? What do they care about? And then I want you to ask yourself 3 major questions. So what are their hopes and dreams? What are their pains and fears? And what are their barriers and uncertainties? Now, I've already emailed Maria. This is called the Halo strategy, by the way. This is where you start to prioritize your customers and what their priorities are in life and business and work and things like that. I've already given Maria a sort of not a Word document, an Excel document that she's going to share with you after this call, where you can start to actually plot it yourself. So, but essentially it's a table that looks like this. And what you want to do is actually think of, customer, X, and you want to start to prioritize or start to jot down. First of all, start by jotting down what are their hopes and dreams. So what are they trying to achieve? What are their pains and fears? What are they afraid of happening? So a lot of customers, well, a hot tip here, a lot of customers are afraid of looking silly. So how does your solution actually help? Like, are they scared of that? Like, are they worried about looking silly in front of their boss? Start jotting that stuff down. And what are the barriers and uncertainties? So what are they not sure about in relation to your business? What would prevent them from sort of, acquiring your services? And then what you're going to do is put an importance score next to them. So, you've got, if you've got sort of your first priority, hopes and dreams, that might be the number one thing that you need to care about. So I'm going to give you an example. So let's call this business Bob's bookkeeping service. So you've got Bob, he offers bookkeeping services to customers in the IT services space, and he's looking to acquire more customers in that space, right? So a good example for him that he might put in his hopes and dreams category are, he just wants to, people just want to make sure that their books are clean. They want to make sure that their expenses are categorized correctly. They want someone to take care of their BAS. They want someone who understands the IT landscape and that there's various revenue streams when it comes to the IT landscape. So making sure that those are categorized. A few bookkeepers might not know that. An example of the pains and the fears that he would put in there is, maybe they've been burnt by another bookkeeper in the past. Maybe things were not categorized correctly. Maybe revenue wasn't categorized correctly, and it's just sort of made a mess of it when it comes to tax time. And a barrier might be that they're with an existing bookkeeper already, and they feel like the transition is too hard to move, and there's a barrier there for them to move to another customer. So think about that in relation to your customers. So you start to paint a picture of what your ideal customer is going to look like and what their hopes, dreams, pains, fears, barriers are going to be. All right. So this is where we start to talk about, so we're going to just let's park that for a minute, and we've done that exercise. So that's a really, really good start. Here's where I want you to start thinking about your competitors. I don't want people to spend too much time on this because I really think it's important. Like when working with me, you'll sort of understand, I think it's important to keep our finger on the pulse about what is happening in the market. I'm just seeing Wayne's question. I don't know if you can finish it for me, but if we've got multiple customers, you do that exercise multiple times, Wayne. You would pick out, let's say Tom is a customer and he works in, IT services in the cybersecurity space. You've got I don't know, Pam, who's a customer, and she works mostly in the hardware space. So let's segment them out. You do it multiple times. So going on to competitors. So working with me, you'll sort of understand, I think it's important to keep your finger on the pulse when it comes to what's going in the market, but don't waste too much time obsessing with what your competitors are doing. It's just distraction. It's important to understand the themes that they're going for and what is going on in the market as a whole, but don't waste too much time sort of obsessing over the ebook that they've created or the blog that they've created. Everyone's on a different journey. So let's make sure that, you're not wasting too much time there. So what I want you to do here, and this is just one of the exercises that we sort of do, there's various different ways we can sort of, do this type of table and plot your competitors. But one of my favorite ways is plotting your top 4 competitors plus you on this graph. And what you want to do is have a look at, do they add value and do they reduce cost in a business? So when I say, I think an important thing is reducing cost does not mean your services cost less. It indicates that you're reducing the cost for the customer. So I want to make that super clear, because we've had people sort of say to us, well, I don't want to reduce the prices of my services, and that's not what we're saying. So we want to make it clear that it is, how does your services help the customer reduce their cost? So where you always want to be is in that top right hand corner, right? You want to be adding value, reducing cost. Sometimes you don't want to be, sometimes you just want to be adding value, and that's okay. But above that middle line is really where you want to be. Above that middle sort of horizontal line is where you want to be. So does your service add value, and does it reduce cost? So if you're finding that you're plotting your competitors in the same quadrant or really close together, that should be a sign, which is what I suspect most of you are potentially going to think about and potentially do. That's a sign for you to start thinking about, okay, so where can I differentiate? So, you know, there's a couple of examples here on the screen. So, is there a way that you can increase value? Can you add a free service or a product? Like, I had a guy come out to me, it's an IT, sort of like a handyman, like a, I don't know how to describe it actually. He was sort of like a cable guy. He came and like plugged in my mum's TV for her. She was having some IT issues with her laptop and her TV, and he had to do, it had some plugging into the back of the modem. He added in the Ethernet cables for me, and so I didn't have to pay for them. So that was sort of a nice little value add, and that might be really basic to this audience, but to me, I didn't have to try and find an Ethernet cable. I'm in Brisbane, my mum's down in Melbourne, so I didn't have to try and find an Ethernet cable, go and get her to pick it up so she could come back so the guy could finish the job. He just sort of did it for me, which was a really nice value add. So is there something like that you can offer? And, you know, we sort of do help customers help to flesh this out as well. Can you offer free advice or an FAQ hub? Like, what can you do that's going to maximize value? So then the other thing is, how do we reduce costs in the customer's business? So, you know, is your service priced so they don't need to hire a resource? A lot of the time that is the case. Like, and that's one of the key things that's sort of missed in marketing with MSPs is you're actually saving the customer from having to hire someone. Is there a leasing model or something so the outlay is not the same? I'm just sort of spitballing ideas on this slide, but what is going to sort of move you a little bit further away from your competitor, and what can you message, and we'll move on to that in the next slide, what can you message that's going to help you move away from them in the market? All right, and then the last section is defining your offer. So this is where I want you to think about your top 3 offerings. So that might be a virtual CISO service. It might be hardware installation, or I'm just gonna pull up some examples. And then I want you to go ask yourself, what am I really good at? Am I really good at these services that I'm currently marketing, and do my people enjoy doing it? If you're not, then that's probably a point for you to pause and rethink. If you're not so good, or what do you not know enough about that you potentially want to get up there? So if I use Bob's bookkeeping again, so categorization might be something that he's really good at. He really likes clean books. He enjoys doing the BAS. So rather than just asking yourself, what am I doing differently? So this is where I want to be really clear. Rather than just asking yourself what you do differently from your competitors, ask yourself some really granular questions like I've got on the screen. So don't just say, oh, so what do I do differently? Oh, I don't know. We all do the same thing. Actually say, so what am I good at? What am I not so good at? Where are the skills of my people? What do we know a lot about? Where can I add value to my customers in the areas that I've identified here? And that's going to help you, again, move that little bit further forward. So it's about what are the core offerings in your business. We work with a lot of customers who do a lot of different things. And one of the things that we sort of always recommend is to bring it back to 3 core offerings. What are you actually want to get out. It doesn't mean, and this comes back to this famous line that I was talking about, it doesn't mean that if a customer came to you and said, I need your service that you've been promoting and you're really good at, but I also need XYZ, that you wouldn't do the other things that they need. It's just what gets the customer's foot through the door. That's really what I want you to think about here. And then what we do here is we actually give you a bit of a unique selling proposition. So we come up with this sort of framework for you, which actually goes into the gain creators, the pain relievers for your customers, because they're not the same thing, and the products and services. So we usually start with the products and services. So once we've really sort of nutted down what your 3 key offerings are, we put them in here. And then we think about the gain creators and the pain relievers. So the gain creators is what the customer's going to get. Pain relievers is what are we taking away. So that's really like what the beginning of a USP starts to look like. I've just spoken a lot. I'm going to pause there again for questions before I go into the last section.
There are no questions in the chat at this stage.
Okay. I'm hoping that's because everyone's sort of taking notes, and
I think it's because you're covering everything in great detail, Kayla. I've got a load of notes. I'm madly taking notes. So I'm quite interested in all of this. I think it's fabulous.
Cool. Okay, well, that being said then, I'll jump into the last bit, and that is measure, measure, measure. So I am really passionate about this, measuring your return on investment. That is the whole reason I started Inception. I really believe that you need to be testing everything and measuring everything before you put your hard-earned marketing dollars behind and your hard-earned dollars, revenue profit, behind your marketing spend. So I really believe in seeing return on investment for your marketing spend. So, and again, like I just said, this is the whole reason I started the business. I was seeing a lot of MSPs, a lot of technology services businesses who were throwing thousands and thousands of dollars down the drain with marketing agencies, and they weren't seeing that return on investment. Is a really common scenario in this industry. And like I said, again, my driving factor behind this business, I am not against marketing agencies. I think they absolutely have a specialized set of skills that I personally do not have. And, we sort of do have some of the skills in my team, but my team are a team of marketers, right? And we're a team of marketing managers. So that's not really what we do. We work with a lot of different marketing agencies across a number of our clients to help them manage that marketing agency. So, but what we see time and time again is just thousands of dollars thrown at Google advertising, LinkedIn advertising, and they're just not seeing that return on investment. We worked with a customer yesterday who their marketing agency had spent 150% more than their allocated budget for last month. So it's just a really common scenario. So what we do, or what we advise that you do when we are testing new messaging. So we've been through the process of analyzing your offerings, analyzing your target markets, looking at the competitor landscape, understanding where you fit. We've developed a really good USP. We don't just go, here you go, here's a set of messages, go out and market them. We actually test it. We run a 30-day beta campaign test with your messaging to actually see if it's going to resonate with your audience. So we do this organically. We don't actually put any marketing budget behind it. We just test the messaging with your organic audience, your existing customer base. So we have a look at your email list and your organic social media, and we just test little, new introduction of new messaging, introduction of new core offerings, things like that to begin with. What we're looking for is an uplift in your content engagement, or the engagement from your customer audience and the desired customer audience. So we look for, like I said, post engagement, marketing engagement. We see what's landing. We test different subject lines. We test different captions and things like that. We should be seeing an increase in your brand search volume. So if you are working with an existing marketing agency, that you should have, they should be monitoring your SEO at an absolute minimum. And you should be seeing an uplift in that brand search volume. Probably not in the 30 days, I'm going to say, but you should be starting to see that after that 30-day period. And then we tune into social listening, right? So what is the market actually speaking about, and are you resonating with that? Is your messaging and what your offer is actually resonating to that? So great example that I'm sure everybody is sick of hearing about is AI. So, you know, Copilot, ChatGPT, what are they talking about, and have you got an offer that is sort of aligned to that and talking the same language? That's really what we look for. Are you sort of doing that, but in your own tone? And tone is another thing that I haven't covered today, but I'm happy to talk about, because every brand is going to have a tone, and that is sort of part of your branding exercise as well. And that is it from me. So I've got a slot in here for questions, which I might actually leave to the end, but I wanted to basically extend an offer out to everyone on this call. So we I've had a chat to the team, and they are, well, actually to my CMO who does most of this stuff. She thinks that doing a free brand positioning assessment is going to be a great idea, and I tend to agree. So what we do is we sit with your team and you for an hour, and we just go through basically what I've gone through, the process that I've gone through today, but in a bit more detail, and with a few more elements, to basically go through and have a look at what your brand positioning is looking like at the moment. And we basically give you a few actionable items that you can take away and probably implement yourself. The other thing that I have stuck in here as well is actually a 50% off your USP development. So what we do here is we sit with you for about 3 hours, and this is where we go into a really complex sort of USP development, sort of what I've done today, but with a lot more detail. So it's we actually come up with your customer wheel as well as your USP square that I had up on the screen before, and we basically give you sort of a pack of, you know, new key messages, new sort of branding offers and things like that. So we have taken 50% off that one for this group, but it is also 3 hours of your time investment as well. So on that, are there any questions? Hopefully.
Okay, I have made everybody's cameras and microphones available. So if anyone would like to ask a question with their voices, they can.
The floor is open.
Put it in the chat. You know, or make a comment. It doesn't have to be a question. It can be a comment. I was really pleased to hear you mention the measurement, because, you know, you said you've heard of MSPs spending thousands of dollars. I've heard of MSPs spending tens and tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And when I've asked them, what did you get for it? They didn't know. The answer was, I don't know. I don't know. And that.
Yeah. Well, no, the classic answer is usually, Maria, I've got a lot of brand exposure, and you know, I got some lots of brand exposure and brand uplift during the process.
And that doesn't pay the bills.
That is not a lead.
No, that's right.
Hello, Wayne. How are you?
Good, thanks. I had a question. I typed it into the chat, but then as I'm busy copying and pasting your slides into my notes, I lost my question.
So I've got some good news for you, Wayne. The slides will actually be sent out to everyone who attended today, as will the spreadsheet that Kayla mentioned before. So I'm going to send them that out along with a link for the recording that we've done. So you'll get them all sent out this afternoon. And Alan has asked, there we go. Thank you, Kayla, for the Harley Davidson one, which I love. This is the bit that excited me. You know, it's like so cool. What was your question, Wayne?
I can't remember my question. I was simply going to say I love the way this content's been presented, and I've seen a number of different marketing presentations before, but you've kept it dead simple. I love it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. I definitely don't want to overcomplicate this stuff because it doesn't have to be complicated. Yeah. Thank you.
Any questions, comments, thoughts? As Kayla said, her contact details are available. I'll send them out. Kayla, I can send out your contact details to everybody.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
I send out, so I'll share Kayla's contact details with everybody when I send out the spreadsheet, and the slides, and I'll send out a link to the recording, which will be on the YouTube site. And then you can all rewatch if you need to, have a look at the slides, do your own work
Positioning
on your
statement. Yeah.
positioning statement.
And again, if